Welcome, everybody, to our deep dive. We're going to be looking at Tibetan Buddhism today, specifically the Tibetan Book of the Great Liberation.
Yeah.
This text, it's pretty amazing. I mean, it was formulated centuries ago, we think, by Padmasambhava.
Right.
And then it was rediscovered, like, in the 20th century. So it's, a little time capsule of wisdom.
Yeah.
But it's not just, some dusty old philosophy book. It claims to actually hold the key to achieving nirvana, which, that's a pretty big claim.
That's a big one.
But what I find really fascinating is that it puts, the human mind right at the center of that journey.
It really does. That's what makes it so unique. It's not about, external rituals and practices.
Right.
It's really about deeply understanding your own mind. How does your mind work?
Yeah, it's almost like unlocking some kind of secret code within ourselves.
Yeah.
And to kind of guide us on this exploration, we have the extraordinary figure of Padmasambhava himself and, his life story. It's so incredible. It's hard to separate fact from myth and legend.
It really is. His story is so woven into the teachings. It adds that layer of mystique.
Totally.
It really draws you in. Imagine this. 12 years after Buddha dies,
Hey.
Padmasambhava is born from a lotus blossom.
Wow.
Yeah, his arrival is prophesied, and he's destined to spread this, more esoteric side of Buddhist teachings, the hidden side.
Okay, so that's quite an entrance.
Yeah.
But it's not just, his birth that's remarkable. He's recognized as a prince. He masters all these different disciplines.
Oh, yeah.
Astrology and medicine and even archery, which that seems a little unusual for a spiritual master.
It might seem that way,
Right.
but it actually reflects a key concept in Tibetan Buddhism. It's this balance between physical and spiritual development.
Oh, okay.
You got to cultivate both inner and outer strength.
So it's not about rejecting the world, the physical world, but more about honing skills and achieving some kind of mastery.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And then, like any good hero's journey, he renounces all that power.
Right.
Worldly power.
Yeah.
He embarks on this path to enlightenment.
Yeah.
And he faces some crazy challenges along the way.
This is where the story gets really captivating. Kings, demons, you said, he's even burned at the stake and survives.
Yeah.
I mean, these trials, they seem, pretty fantastical,
They do.
but I'm guessing they hold a deeper meaning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're not meant to be taken literally. It's really about, what are the obstacles? What are the temptations that we encounter on the path to spiritual growth?
Okay.
And Padmasambhava, he shows us, he models for us how we overcome them.
Right.
It's about that transformative power of spiritual realization.
Okay, so it sounds like his life is kind of a metaphor for the inner journey, that we all must undertake. So how does the Tibetan Book of the Great Liberation, how does it actually define the mind? I mean, we've established its importance, but what is it?
Well, that's where this text gets really radical. It states that the mind is both the source of our suffering and the key to our liberation.
That's quite a paradox. So it's not about silencing the mind, it's about understanding how it works.
Exactly.
Okay.
The text describes it as timeless, it's uncreated, void of any inherent qualities, kind of like the open sky.
Okay.
And it suggests that everything we experience, everything we perceive, arises from mental concepts, which are ultimately illusions.
Wait, so you're saying that our entire experience of reality is just a projection of our own minds?
Yeah.
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
I know. It's a challenging idea to grasp.
Yeah.
But think of it this way. If we recognize that those mental constructs are just illusions, we can actually break free from the suffering that they cause.
Oh, okay.
And then we can experience a deeper, more authentic reality.
So instead of being trapped by our thoughts and perceptions, we can learn to see through them, to kind of detach from those stories we tell ourselves.
That's the essence of it. And to help us do that, the text outlines a specific path of introspection and meditation.
Okay.
It urges us to seek the truth within ourselves, rather than relying on external sources.
This idea of turning inward, becoming our own guru, it's really intriguing, but what do those introspective practices actually look like?
Well, the text emphasizes things like the yoga of introspection,
Okay.
which basically involves closely observing our thoughts and emotions without judgment.
Right.
Just becoming aware of that constant chatter that's happening in our minds.
That sounds really challenging, especially in our modern world with all the distractions and information overload.
It is.
How do we even begin to cultivate that kind of stillness?
Yeah, it does require effort
Yeah.
and discipline. Another practice that's discussed is the yoga of the fatness.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a moment where you sense a deeper reality beyond like the surface of things?
Yeah.
It's this kind of underlying isness to everything.
Yeah. I think I know what you mean. It's like those moments of awe when you're like in nature or when you connect deeply with another person.
Yes.
Is that what this practice is about? Cultivating that awareness?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that ultimate nature of reality, the that, which underlies all phenomena. It's a practice of peeling back the layers of our perceptions to glimpse the true nature of existence.
This text is starting to sound like both a philosophical exploration and a practical guide
Yeah.
to like a more profound way of being.
It is. It's both, which
Yeah.
is what makes it so compelling. It delves into those profound questions about the mind, reality, but it also offers those concrete tools for transformation.
I like that.
To understand the path more clearly, I think we need to look at two key concepts that the text introduces. One is the fourfold great path,
Okay.
and the other one is the doctrine of the three times.
Okay, let's unpack those. What are those all about?
So the fourfold great path provides a framework for like the whole journey to liberation. And it includes the teaching, the meditation, the practice, and the fruit.
Okay.
It emphasizes that true understanding requires both knowledge and action. It's not enough to just read about it.
Yeah.
We have to embody the teachings in our lives.
So it's about like integrating those insights into our daily experience.
Exactly.
What about the doctrine of the three times? That sounds intriguing.
Well, it explores the nature of past, present, and future.
Okay.
And it suggests that by releasing attachments to the past and anxieties about the future, we can fully inhabit the present moment.
That makes sense. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in regrets or worries.
It is.
But this idea of just like letting go and being present feels really liberating.
It does. And it speaks to the transformative power of mindfulness, which is
Yeah.
a key element of the Buddhist path. To kind of illustrate this, there's a really powerful quote from Padmasambhava himself.
Okay.
He says, "The Dharma being nowhere save in the mind, there is no other place of meditation than the mind."
That's a striking statement. It really drives home that like everything we seek is already within us.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this whole emphasis on the inner journey is echoed in the teachings of Padmasambhava.
Okay.
He was a disciple of Padmasambhava.
Okay.
He offers a slightly different perspective on the path.
So we're getting like multiple voices and perspectives within this tradition.
Yes.
I'm curious to hear more about Padmasambhava. What makes his teachings stand out?
He's known for his last testamentary teachings, which he offered toward the end of his life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they're filled with like really poignant advice.
Okay.
And it's really relatable advice about how to navigate the challenges of everyday life and prepare for death.
It sounds like he's offering like a more grounded approach.
Yes.
Perhaps more accessible even for those of us who aren't seeking like full monastic renunciation.
You're right. His teachings have this very down-to-earth quality to them.
Mm-hmm.
While still deeply rooted in Buddhist principles, he focuses on things like detaching from possessions and finding meaning in the face of impermanence.
Okay. I'm definitely interested to hear more about how he frames these ideas.
His teachings are full of these like vivid images
Okay.
and metaphors that make even the most profound concepts relatable. For example, he uses the image of a nomad's camp as a metaphor for our attachment to like our homeland.
Okay.
And he compares wealth and riches to illusions. He says they're like illusions loaned for a moment's use.
Those are really powerful images.
Yeah.
He's like urging us to see the world with fresh eyes, to recognize that like fleeting nature of things that we often cling to so tightly.
Exactly. And he doesn't shy away from the reality of death.
Right.
He even reminds us that even on our birthdays, omens of one's death appear.
Wow.
Yeah, and he encourages us to prepare for that inevitable journey
Right.
and to focus on what truly matters.
That's a powerful reminder to live intentionally, to not waste time on things that ultimately don't matter.
It is.
But it also sounds a bit daunting.
Yeah.
How does he make facing death less frightening?
He emphasizes the importance of the Dharma,
Okay.
the teachings of the Buddha as our true guide.
Mhm.
He encourages us to devote ourselves to the sacred Dharma path
Right.
and to find a trusted spiritual teacher or, a guru to support us on this journey.
So even though he's encouraging detachment from like worldly things, he's not suggesting we have to go it alone.
Not at all. The guru plays a vital role.
Mm.
They illuminate the path
Right.
and they offer guidance.
Mm-hmm.
He assures us that once found, the sacred guru is never afterward lost.
That's reassuring. It's like having a wise friend.
Yeah.
To accompany us through the ups and downs of life.
Yes.
And the unknown territory that lies beyond.
And his teachings are full of practical wisdom too. He reminds us to be generous, to avoid pursuing power just for the sake of it, and to always seek what he calls the true state firm and stable of the pure mind.
It seems like it all comes back to the mind.
It does.
It's like the source of our suffering, but also the key to our liberation.
Yeah.
And by understanding its true nature, we can unlock a deeper level of peace and fulfillment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Vedanta Sangye's teachings are a perfect complement to the teachings of Padmasambhava. They provide this more grounded, practical approach to embodying these truths.
It's fascinating how these two figures offer distinct but complementary perspectives on the path to liberation. It really speaks to the richness and depth of Tibetan Buddhism.
It does. And the fact that these teachings were hidden away for centuries and then rediscovered, in modern times makes them even more intriguing.
It's like a gift from the past.
Yes.
A reminder that this, the wisdom of the ancients is still relevant today.
Absolutely. And Padmasambhava's life story, as extraordinary as it is, serves as a reminder that the path to enlightenment is available to all of us.
Right.
It's a journey of self-discovery, transformation, and ultimately liberation.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating how his life mirrors those teachings, right? He becomes like a living embodiment of those principles. And we see this in the book, in the epitome of the great guru's biography.
Okay, yeah. This is where things go from inspiring to almost unbelievable.
I know, right?
His story reads like some epic adventure, But with that, spiritual core.
It does. But remember, this biography, it wasn't meant to be a strictly factual account.
Right.
It's more like a way of transmitting teachings through storytelling.
Oh, okay.
Much like ancient myths and legends.
Makes sense. I mean, those stories would be a lot more engaging and memorable than just dry doctrines.
Exactly.
So where did we leave off with Padmasambhava? I think he was setting off to find teachers, even though, he was considered this enlightened being.
You're right. He recognized that even with his innate wisdom, there was always more to learn. And his commitment to seeking out gurus really highlights the importance of humility. And that spiritual development is a lifelong thing.
Yeah, it's like saying even the most advanced beings can benefit from guidance and mentorship.
Exactly.
And Padmasambhava didn't limit himself. He sought out masters in all sorts of fields.
Oh, yeah. He took a holistic approach to learning.
Yeah.
He studied everything: astrology, medicine, languages, you name it.
It's like he understood that every discipline could offer a unique perspective, on the nature of reality.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about spiritual knowledge, but expanding his awareness in all these different directions.
And that's reflected in his teachings, which blend practical wisdom with those really profound philosophical insights.
So who were some of the key figures that kind of shaped his path? Were there any mentors that particularly stand out?
One of the most influential was a guy named Prabhahasti.
Okay.
He was described as an emanation of the Adi Buddha, the primordial Buddha.
Wow.
Yeah, and he taught Padmasambhava the foundations of what's called the Mahayana path, which emphasizes compassion.
Okay.
And, pursuing enlightenment for the benefit of all beings.
So we're seeing that lineage of wisdom being passed down.
Yes.
From the Adi Buddha to Prabhahasti to Padmasambhava.
It's beautiful.
But it wasn't a passive process, right?
Definitely not. Padmasambhava, he really engaged deeply with the teachings.
Okay.
For instance, to purify him of any past transgressions, Prabhahasti required him to review each teaching 18 times.
18 times.
18 times.
Wow, that's incredible. That speaks to such a level of dedication and commitment.
Right.
He wasn't just memorizing.
No.
He was internalizing these teachings, making them a part of himself.
Exactly. And this rigorous training prepared him for the incredible challenges that he would face later on.
Speaking of challenges, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that whole episode where he's burned at the stake and emerges unscathed.
Oh, yeah.
That seems to defy all logic.
I know.
How do we make sense of that?
Well, remember, the biography is interwoven with, symbolism and mystical elements.
Right.
The burning at the stake is likely a metaphor for like the purification process, the burning away of the ego and attachments.
That's a really helpful way to understand it. It's like those trials by fire that heroes face, in myths and legends.
Yes.
They represent those obstacles that we have to overcome to achieve true spiritual growth.
Exactly. And Padmasambhava's ability to emerge from the flames symbolizes the transformative power of that spiritual realization. It suggests that he's transcended those limitations of the physical world. It's like a demonstration of the triumph of the spirit.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. But his adventures don't end there, right?
Oh, no.
He goes on to subdue demons, interact with kings and queens, and even, shape the landscape of Tibet itself.
He does. His story is filled with all these extraordinary encounters, each one offering teachings about skillful means, compassion, and overcoming obstacles on the path to spreading the Dharma.
And all of this leads us to Tibet, right? I mean, this is the Tibetan Book of the Great Liberation.
Right.
It's not just about individual enlightenment, but about establishing a spiritual tradition in a specific land.
Yes, and this is where Padmasambhava's journey takes a really fascinating turn.
Okay.
The biography goes into detail about his arrival in Tibet.
Okay.
And the challenges he faced in bringing those Buddhist teachings to this land that was already steeped in, its own ancient beliefs and practices.
Okay, I'm ready to hear more about this Tibetan adventure. What drew him to this particular place?
Well, according to the text, he was invited to Tibet by King Trisong Detsen, who's a big supporter of Buddhism.
Okay.
The king was in the process of building the Samye Monastery.
Okay.
But he was facing some, let's say, unusual obstacles.
Unusual how? Was it like a shortage of building materials?
Nope.
Political conflicts?
Not quite. The text says supernatural forces were interfering with the construction.
Okay, hold on. That sounds more like a scene from a supernatural thriller than, a historical account.
I know, right?
What was behind these, strange events?
It was believed that powerful spirits, maybe threatened by this new religion, were actively sabotaging the construction.
Oh, wow.
It was like a clash of spiritual forces.
Okay.
And it was believed that only a master like Padmasambhava could subdue these entities.
So he was brought in as a spiritual troubleshooter.
Yes, an expert in navigating those unseen realms.
I like that.
And when he arrived, he was met with great reverence.
Okay.
The king himself escorted him to Lhasa with, all the ceremonies and festivities befitting a spiritual dignitary.
So they definitely recognized the importance of his mission. So how did he deal with these troublesome spirits? Did he have any, special tools or techniques?
He used a combination of yogic powers, rituals, and skillful communication.
Okay.
The text describes him performing ceremonies, making offerings to local deities, and even, engaging in psychic battles with these malevolent beings.
Yeah. This sounds intense. What kind of strategies did he use in these psychic battles?
He drew upon his deep understanding of Buddhist teachings, using mantras, mudras, visualizations to channel these powerful energies and basically outwit these entities.
I can only imagine the kind of spiritual forces at play during these encounters.
Yeah.
Did the text offer any details about what these spirits looked or felt like?
It focuses more on the symbolic meaning of these encounters.
Okay.
Highlighting Padmasambhava's mastery over those unseen realms.
Okay.
For example, during the consecration ceremony of the Samye Monastery, he's said to have manifested in 108 bodies.
108 bodies. Simultaneously performing rituals in each of the temples.
Yes.
That's incredible, but how is that even possible?
Well, it's important to remember that these accounts are filled with symbolism.
Okay.
And the number 108, it holds a really sacred significance in Buddhism. It represents wholeness, completion. So this event likely symbolizes that, pervasive nature of Padmasambhava's spiritual energy, filling every corner of that monastery.
It's like his being expanded to encompass the entire sacred space, ensuring its protection and potency.
Exactly. And the text describes other miraculous events too, like images of deities coming to life, flames erupting from, sacred artwork, lotus blossoms appearing spontaneously.
Wow.
All these events highlight that transformative power of his presence.
It sounds like the monastery itself was awakened by this influx of spiritual energy. So Did he ultimately succeed in overcoming all these obstacles?
He did. Through his efforts, the Samye Monastery was finally completed, and it became a beacon of Buddhist teachings in Tibet.
Awesome.
But his mission didn't end there.
Of course not. He had a whole land to influence. What happened next?
Well, Padmasambhava traveled throughout Tibet, subduing more negative forces, establishing monasteries, and he even hid sacred texts for future generations.
Wait, hid texts? Why would he do that?
He understood that not everyone was ready for those really advanced teachings he had to offer.
Oh, okay.
So he concealed these texts, they're called termas, in caves, lakes, other secret locations, trusting they would be discovered when the time was right.
Okay.
By individuals, with the right karmic connection and the spiritual maturity to understand them.
It's like he planted these seeds of wisdom, to sprout in the future.
Exactly.
Ensuring those teachings would continue to unfold over time.
And these termas have actually played a crucial role in the development of Tibetan Buddhism.
Wow.
As they're discovered throughout the centuries, they reveal new layers of understanding, new practices. And this whole concept of hidden teachings, it suggests that wisdom unfolds in stages. It's tailored to the individual's level of readiness.
It's a fascinating concept. It's like a spiritual treasure hunt, with each discovery illuminating that path to enlightenment a little bit more. It seems like Padmasambhava really took this long-term approach to spreading the Dharma in Tibet.
He did. He wasn't just concerned with immediate conversion.
Right.
He was planting seeds for a tradition that would flourish for generations to come.
So his impact extends far beyond his own lifetime.
Yes.
He's not just a historical figure, but a living presence within Tibetan Buddhism. His story and his teachings continue to guide and inspire.
It's interesting to consider how his efforts to establish Buddhism in Tibet, they parallel that inner work we've been talking about, right?
Yeah.
Just as he had to clear away obstacles and lay that foundation for new spiritual tradition, we too have to engage in that work of clearing away our own mental and emotional obstacles to create that fertile ground for wisdom and compassion to flourish.
Wow. It's been quite a journey exploring the Tibetan Book of the Great Liberation.
It has.
We've covered prophecy and miraculous feats, yogic practices, Tibetan history.
I know, right.
It feels like we've traversed both inner and outer landscapes.
We have.
So, as with any good journey, I think it's helpful to just pause, reflect.
Yeah.
What have we learned? What stands out to you as the most significant takeaway from this deep dive?
I think for me, one of the most powerful themes has been that emphasis on the mind.
Right.
As the source of both our suffering and our liberation.
Yeah, that's been woven throughout everything we've discussed.
It really has. It's the central premise of the text.
Right.
And it's what makes it so unique.
Right.
It's not about, seeking solace in external rituals or dogmas.
Right.
It's about turning inward to understand the nature of our own minds. It's like the text is saying, look, the answers you seek aren't out there somewhere. They're right here.
Right here.
Within the depths of your own consciousness.
Yeah, and it doesn't just, stop at that intriguing idea.
No.
It offers these concrete practices, the yoga of introspection and the yoga of the fitness to actually help us cultivate that understanding.
It does. It's a path of both insight and action.
Right.
Recognizing that true transformation requires both understanding and practice.
Right.
And these practices, they encourage us to just observe our thoughts, our emotions, but without judgment.
Right.
To see that illusory nature of our perceptions,
yeah,
and ultimately to cultivate a state of awareness that transcends the limitations of the ego.
I can see how those practices could be incredibly beneficial, but I also imagine they require a lot of discipline. And effort.
Yeah.
It feels like we're talking about rewiring our entire way of thinking, our perception of reality.
It's not a quick fix. It's an ongoing process of self-discovery and refinement.
Right.
But the text assures us that the rewards are immeasurable.
Okay.
By understanding the mind, we can break free from that cycle of suffering.
Right.
That keeps us trapped, in those limiting patterns and experience a much deeper level of peace, joy, and ultimately, enlightenment.
It sounds like a worthwhile pursuit, even if it's challenging.
It is.
And thankfully, we don't have to navigate this path alone. We have, the teachings of Padmasambhava, his incredible life story as inspiration.
Yeah.
And then we have Padampa Sangye offering like that more practical advice on how to live a meaningful life.
Right. They're like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
The visionary and the pragmatic.
Right.
While their styles differ,
yeah,
they both point us in the same direction.
Inward.
And both emphasize the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, as our guide.
It is interesting how those two figures, both so significant within Tibetan Buddhism, offer those distinct but like complementary perspectives. It suggests that there are many paths within this tradition, each tailored to like different temperaments and approaches.
Yeah. That's the beauty of a rich, spiritual tradition like Tibetan Buddhism.
Right.
It offers this tapestry of teachings and practices. So individuals can find what really resonates with them, with their own unique journey. But even beyond the specific context of Tibetan Buddhism, this text offers like universal lessons.
Right.
That anyone can apply to their lives, regardless of their like spiritual background.
Absolutely. This emphasis on mindfulness, compassion, the transformative power of understanding the mind.
Yeah.
Those are relevant to anyone seeking a more meaningful life.
It's true. And that reminder, that the path to liberation isn't a solitary pursuit, that's incredibly encouraging.
Yeah.
We have the teachings of these wise masters to guide us, and we can support each other through the challenges and the triumphs of this journey.
Yeah, community seems to play such a vital role in, spiritual development.
It does.
It offers encouragement, accountability, a sense of shared purpose.
Yeah.
It's like recognizing that, we're all in this together.
We are. And this deep dive has really just been like a small glimpse into this vast world of Tibetan Buddhism.
Right.
I'm curious, has this sparked any further questions for you?
Definitely. I'm feeling really inspired to learn more about like the practices of Tibetan Buddhism. Yeah. Particularly like those related to mindfulness and meditation. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
There's always more to discover, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I encourage you and all of our listeners to keep exploring.
Yeah.
Dive deeper into the texts that resonate with you. Seek out experienced teachers.
Right.
And most importantly, embark on your own journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
The path unfolds one step at a time.
I love that. And, we've been exploring this idea that liberation comes from understanding the mind. But if, as the text suggests, all phenomena are mental constructs, what does that say about the nature of reality itself? Like, is there a reality beyond our perceptions?
That is a question.
A big question.
That has puzzled philosophers and spiritual seekers for, like, centuries.
Right.
It's definitely something to ponder as you continue your exploration. Perhaps the journey itself is the answer.
That's a beautiful thought to leave our listeners with.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll bring this deep dive into the Tibetan Book of the Great Liberation to a close.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving.